Hi, everyone. I'm Kwok-leong Tang, Digital China Fellow of the Fairbanks Center, and my colleague Kathy uh, will be the host of tonight's event. And I will let Catherine to introduce the format of tonight's event and the presenters uh, of this East Asian Digital Scholarship Community meeting. Please, Catherine.
Hi, welcome everyone. This is the second East Asian Digital Scholarship Community Hour. It's a casual bi-monthly gathering where we can share ideas and skills and projects and just learn new things from each other on a digital stage. This event is hosted by the Fairbanks Center for Chinese Studies and the Reishar Institute of Japanese Studies at Harvard University, but it's open to everyone and it's been really established to build a community for East Asian digital scholarship very broadly. As Kwok-leong mentioned, I'm Kathy Matsuura, the Japan Digital Scholarship Librarian at the Japan Digital Research Center, and it's actually my co-host, Kwok-leong Tang, who is he's the Digital China Fellow at Fairbanks Center, and he's really the mastermind and inspiration behind everything. So I have to give him really all the credit here. This community hour is new, and we are still experimenting and trying lots of new ideas with regard to the format time. And unlike the first event, we've decided to work with a focused theme this time, and all of the talks are going to be focused on digital pedagogy, and more specifically, cool tools for online teaching. That's what our focus is. So we have 5 speakers, and they're going to be presenting for approximately 5 minutes. We're going to open up the floor for up to 2 questions after each talk, but I really don't want to lose track of time. So after the second question, I'm going to begin introducing the next speaker and try to ensure that we can get through all the talks and still save a good portion of time so that's completely devoted to question and answer and audience sharing thoughts at the end of the evening. So our first speaker this evening is Professor Shigehisa Kuriyama, the Reishar Institute Professor of Cultural History in the Department of East Asian Languages and Civilizations at Harvard University. Please go ahead and sit on the floor, Professor.
Okay, actually, I think I will share my screen. I think this is the one I want. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Sorry, let's see, what am I? My apologies. Wait. That's odd. Oh no, okay, very odd. If you could go to speaker view, I think you'll see it large enough for our purposes. Oh, sorry, this is very odd. Do you see me with the background?
We see you, Hisa, but have you opened? Do you have a lot of windows open on your computer? Because if you do, sometimes you have to go to that icon that says show all windows in order to find the one you're looking for.
Okay.
Hisa, I have pinned you as the highlight now, so I think everyone should.
What do you see now? No?
We see you with your eyes closed. Now with your eyes open, talking.
Okay, this is very odd. I can tell you usually this works fine, but that's not great consolation. Why is this doing this?
Yeah, there you go. You got it. Oh, now you moved yourself on top. Yeah, there. Now we have it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure what.
No period picture, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, we see the picture.
Okay. So I've used this for a couple of months. This is a program called, and it's an interface that works. It basically functions as a camera for Zoom or for Google Meet. So everything goes through that. And essentially, replicates many of the functions of just a Zoom like background, but its main advantage is it gives you greater flexibility in manipulating the background and manipulating what you show in sharing screen. Excuse me. So this background that you see is, of course, a virtual background. And you can share things on this so normally in Zoom, if you share a screen, then you appear off, away from your PowerPoint presentation. With it, you can appear within the presentation, and the presentation can take different forms. So for example, oops, sorry, I can show a background. So this is actually a slide that I'm showing. This video, you can show videos, and I've just simply adjusted the size of the video to appear in this particular form. I can also change a room. I can appear as if I was in an old movie. Or, I call this my Alex Zahlten room. And you can appear within any kind of context. Just this. And you can even do, sort of funny things like this. Appear and then show slides in this before you. Now, this room is pretty nice, but it's more than just nice. There's actually something very interesting one can do with this kind of background. Oops, sorry. I want to, let me just go back to that.
Here's maybe you can stop sharing your screen, then everyone can see the larger image.
Stop sharing screen?
Yes.
Sorry, what did you?
That's great. I think you can play with your magic now. Yeah.
There you go. Good, Hisa.
No, sorry, I just wanted to do something else here. Now, this thing is pretty nice, but it's more than just nice. There's actually something. Whoops. Crud. I had this set up. Oh no. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, well, I'll just skip that. And then you can just use it in a standard sort of way to show your PowerPoint presentations. Nice thing is that you can show PNG files so that you can show things that are not rectangular. And this, what I'm doing here is showing just a regular PowerPoint presentation that you can just project onto your background. So you can just use your PowerPoint directly and still appear on the screen. So those are some of the things that you can do with. That's it.
Thank you so much, Professor Kuriyama. That's so cool. A very cool tool. Do we have any questions before we move to the next speaker? Like I said, we can take 2 questions.
Oh, the one thing that I should add is that this only works on Macs at the moment. They're working on coming out with a PC version, but at the moment it only works on Macs.
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, we do have a hand up. Sarah?
Hi. I was just wondering if you noticed increased engagement from your students when you use this versus a regular type presentation. Are more students sort of excited to attend class or have their videos on?
I haven't really used this in any special way for classes yet. I use this regularly with meetings. The main thing is I like being able to appear alongside my presentation or things I want to present. Yeah.
Oh.
I have a comment on that, which is, I think that's exactly the way in which you are part live action with your scene that really makes it very attractive. That's the compelling part of it.
I think Eric can ask one more question.
Okay.
Eric,
Hi.
please.
I think it may have already been asked or answered maybe, but what particular mode of have you found most useful?
What particular mode? I think just as I said, being able to appear together with the presentation and the fact that you can switch rooms instantaneously, just very quickly. And with each room, you can adjust the size at which you appear, the placement and size of the images. So it allows for more dynamic storytelling, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And I should mention, although I sort of messed up the presentation because this was the first time I was trying it, you can actually record yourself on this and use that as a slide. And then basically you can replicate so you can all basically have a conversation with yourself.
Seems like it could be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have other questions, but we'll save them for the end and for the sake of time, continue.
Yep.
Next is Professor Alex Zahlten of the East Asian Language and Civilizations at Harvard. He's a specialist of film and audio culture in East Asia. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce a tool called, or a platform called GatherTown, which is basically a kind of space that you create online where people can congregate for a variety of reasons. So you can do this to have classes, you can use it very much like Zoom with video chat and regular chat and something like breakout rooms, but it's also being used for conferences. It's being used, a lot of people use it now for office hours, for convening kind of different work groups or informal gatherings. So there are also built in ways to use it for with different kinds of games where people can get together in groups. This sounds maybe a little bit abstract. It's generally extremely easy to use, and all you have to do is you set up a space which goes very quickly, and then you send people a URL, and I'm sending you one here right now. This is when I set up for my class that I'm teaching in the spring. And all you have to really do is click on the link, and you will land in the GatherTown space that I've set up. So try it out. I'll share my screen so that you can see me navigating through GatherTown. And what you maybe should do is, oh, I see many of you already have shown up. So what you should do is turn off your microphone, otherwise we'll have feedback. You can leave your camera off if you want, but you can also turn it on. So what it does is, so everyone is congregating here with a little avatar. When you come into the vicinity of someone, you can see that their video fades in. And when you move away, it fades out. So you can choose who you want to actually converse with. Only the person that is close to you is someone you can see or listen to. Okay, so everyone's here. You can approach each other and kind of see how you fade in and fade out. I'm going to walk in. If you look at the shared Zoom screen, I'm going to walk into this is a campus space. It's one of the templates. There are many, many templates for the spaces. And I'm going to walk, this is a big hall that has a lot of social games in it where you can convene And gosh, wait a second. Okay, I'm gonna walk down here and go into the study hall. And here you can see these tables that say private.
I'm sorry, I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh gosh, I hear a feedback. Do people hear that too?
Yeah.
I think. Gosh, if everyone else could turn off their microphones, that might help. So at these tables, basically, if several people come and sit at the table, that's like a breakout room, and only the people sitting at the table can hear and see each other and converse. And you can leave that room and switch, walk your avatar over to a different table that works too, and then you can switch the rooms. You have different kinds of spaces up here where you have whiteboards that you can use, where you can draw, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here we could make a Gather Town tutorial that I drew up earlier, and you can leave it there for later groups to show up. And you can do social events, peer review sessions, office hours within these as you like. So I will stop sharing my screen right now. You can of course stay and jump around and Gather Town a bit more if you like. But this is extremely flexible, and it's since everyone who has a link can just jump in, it's very, very easy to use. The space is, because it's supposed to simulate a physical space, it's there all the time. Once you've set this room up, anyone who has the URL can drop in anytime and meet someone. Which of course also means you don't have necessarily full control of this space, because even if you're offline, anyone who has the link can convene there and have conversations or whatnot. You can set up virtual TVs and have movie screenings within the space. You can have set up a kind of lecture screen within the space. There are many, many sub tools that you can set up. It's all made for usability. Basically, it's a free platform for up to 25 people in the space at one time. If you want more than that, and it can actually accommodate up to 2,000 people in the same space, you have to upgrade to a paid level of the service. But for office hours, for example, where you want to or for social gatherings in a small seminar, it's very, very useful and kind of a due to its flexibility, it's very fun. You can run through all these different functions. Essentially, it does everything that Zoom does, except that it simulates it. You're being in a physical space, and it allows you to do a few other things as well. So I would say it has a lot of flexibility, a lot of plus points. It's very engaging. Students do like it a lot. The drawback is, of course, the issue of the paid upgrading to larger amounts of participants. You have to kind of feel comfortable with that interface. Some people feel that's maybe a bit too frivolous with that kind of 1980s role-playing, computer role-playing game, JRPG type of aesthetic to it. And it's not currently available for mobile devices. So you can only use it with your Mac or PC. But yeah, I would encourage everyone to just jump in and try it out. There's the learning curve is really minuscule. It's very, very easy to utilize. You all have the link now. That's actually my class link, so don't drop in on there too often. You might just run into my students or so. But I should have maybe set up a separate space. But okay, that's it for me. I don't know if anyone has questions. I'm happy to answer them as well as I can.
Thank you so much. I think we have a question from Professor Kuriyama.
Yeah, I just have a practical question about, so we were having this problem of feedback with people, their mics turned on. So how does it work within this?
So the problem there is that we're on Zoom and GatherTown at the same time. That's the interaction. What you can actually do is you can integrate Zoom into GatherTown and have Zoom, if you set up Zoom on a TV monitor that you've set up, a virtual one that you've set up within the space, and then people have to walk up to the TV that you've created in the virtual space. You can have a very problem-free Zoom session as well, although you can also do video chat on GatherTown as well. But if you have both open separately at the same time, there's interaction and you get a kind of audio feedback effect.
Do we have any other questions? Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I'm going to mispronounce your name. I'm sorry, but
it's Daigena.
Daigena.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, a quick question. Thank you so much for this really interesting application. How did you manage to kind of make the character walk around? Were you using the arrows or the mouse?
Arrow keys. Arrow keys.
Okay, thank you.
That was a great question. Actually, I was having trouble moving too. But I guess we will please save more questions for the end of our talk. And I'll continue with our next speaker this evening. This is Juhi Kang, the PhD candidate in History and East Asian Languages at Harvard. Please go ahead, Juhi. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to introduce this another virtual gathering platform called Congregate. So compared to and GatherTown, Congregate provides us with a familiar looking interface. If you want to emulate a conventional classroom setting, Congregate offers just that. So I will be screen sharing for the demonstration. So this is the default sort of Congregate's app page. The biggest advantage Congregate has its intuitive interface. For the instructor, it's incredibly easy to set up a classroom. Choose the Congregate classroom here. So Congregate Social is, I think they are still under construction. Oh, so let's not concern with that. So choose Congregate Classroom in the main page and click on whichever option you prefer. If you're actually offering a full course, I recommend you sign up and create an account so you can retrieve and add it whenever you want. But for a one-time occasion, you can simply log in with your Google account and share the link with your students. So here is actually here is a demo classroom that I have created already. As you can see, the default setup resembles a conventional classroom. On top of the page, as an instructor, you can share a link to an external resources before the class begins. Right underneath is a podium, and I will get back to it later. So as an instructor, you may find these circles on the left of the page quite useful. So I'm gonna go over and sort of simply explain some of the most default and basic functions that you can do with them. The first circle is a community chat room. Anytime during the session, you can make an announcement. You can just click without the first announcement, you will just see simply the page with the first chat box. And with add announce, you can make announcement for the entire classroom. And then you can also see the list of attendees, the students who have entered or has had the access to the link. So you will see where they are at the current moment. Here, if you, as a student, if you enter the room, Congregate, you will be located at lobby. And then once you start participating in each of these smaller group tables, then the table name will also appear underneath your name. So in this third circle, you can post questions. And student can revisit without having to leave their small group discussion tables. So it would be handy if you have some overarching questions you want them to think about throughout the session, or even to remind them of assignments. For instance, I made just a random question here. And then everything is quite intuitive also in the settings. As an instructor, I found the attendee actually quite useful to check this student attendance and whether they are actually online. So you can check whether they are online, offline, and the rest are quite straightforward also. Visuals, you can change colors, statistics, and see how many people are participating and such. All right, now let's go back to the actual classroom. Compared to Zoom, where you have to generate breakout rooms or breakout sessions in the middle of the class, with these tables, you can organically encourage smaller group discussions. As an instructor, you can, excuse me, my Zoom interface is everywhere. So as an instructor, you can add table simply by clicking this plus table, and then set up it pretty straightforward also. Add at maximum 12 participants per a table. From a student perspective, when you sit in one of these tables, you will see other participants. Let's see. So now if Kwok-leong had turned on the camera, we'll be seeing each other on the screen. And so this looks more like a smaller Zoom room. Any participant can also share their screen. And with this function called Whiteboard here, you can sort of create this common shared space. Here, everybody will look at the white screen and they can brainstorm or make some free associations so that later, if they were to present as a group, they can use this space. And then, and another feature is that when you are in the debate, in the small table, you can also, so there's also the Zoom and Congregate looping. You can also create a chat room for that specific small group table. And here you can have your own small chatting. That's my brother, we just tested before the presentation. And then as a host, while everybody is broken into smaller groups and having their discussions, you can make, again, announcement with @announcement, and students will see the announcement popping up over here, no matter where they are, whether they are in Whiteboard or in the group discussion setting, facing each other. Excuse me. So these are the very important feature. So now going back to the podium. So this is something that looks much like the traditional lecture classroom type of setting. As an instructor, you can start presentation by clicking the podium, and then this will be the sort of screen that everybody will see. And again, the rest are quite simple and exactly the same function. You can share your screen, create your own whiteboard for the entire class and such. So these are essentially the basic features and strength of Congregate. I think the main strength really is how similar it is to the actual class setting. There are, however, of course, some small limitations that you might want to consider. Currently, Congregate does not provide full experience to any other browser but Google Chrome. With Safari and Firefox, some of the key functions are either not working or simply inaccessible. So for example, I tried with Safari and the camera was not working. It's also best to use it on laptop or desktop. The interface the website says it provides mobile view, but when you actually use it on mobile Chrome, it can be quite rickety. Another small shortcoming is that you cannot actually turn off your self view. So for instance, here, you will always have to see yourself on top of your screen. And relatedly, you cannot actually change or alter the ratio of each component of the screen. For instance, even if I want to see more of my colleagues or have a larger chat room session, I cannot actually change the size of each component. So, two are the main sort of concerns if you were to use Congregate. How can I? Yes, so that's about it for Congregate.
Thank you so much. It's definitely another cool tool I want to explore. Do we have any questions? Oh, Professor Kuriyama.
Sorry, I mean, such a class. I couldn't figure out how to move to a table.
Are you currently in the lobby? Let's see. You are in the lobby. It's quite simple. You just click on the table.
Okay.
Could you?
I think I better wait because I think I'm having trouble with that. I have it in another browser, so I'm
I see.
a little stuck. Yeah, but that's great.
Thank you. I think we have one more question for now. Sarah?
Hello. I had a question about the size. So what size classes have you used Congregate with, or what size classes could you imagine using Congregate with? Because I saw that each table was limited to 12. So I'm just trying to think through what style size of class would you suggest, or have you used Congregate with?
So I have used this feature for the class that I TF last semester. We had actually used it for the entire class sort of last day of the semester party. So it was meant to be more of a Congregate rather than Congregate classroom. But nonetheless, we had 37 students for the constant attendance. Each table only allows up to 12. So that's a little bit of limitation if you were to actually draw attention from everybody and see how they are doing as an entire group. However, students can sort of hang around in the lobby and they interact with other people through the chat room on the left bar. When it comes down to break room and having a small group discussion, I find it much more useful than Zoom breakout room because most of our classes are actually not terribly big in terms of having to allow more than 12 people for individual small group discussions. And also students can, after a certain period of time, you can but sort of told them to change the groups. And it's pretty easy to move around within the interface. I wonder if that had answered your question.
It did, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Our next speaker this evening is going to be Professor Tammy Blumenfield. She's Associate Professor of Asian Studies at Furman University and also an anthropologist of China.
Thank you very much. And it's a real privilege to be here tonight. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Actually, I'm no longer at Furman University. I have 3 affiliations now, but I will be talking about a project that I did at Furman University with the Anthropology of China class that I taught there. I wasn't aware this was going to be a 5-minute presentation when I signed up, so I'm going to race through this, but I'm really happy to talk more about any of the topics that I bring up either in the Q&A or offline later. So as you all know, there are so many things available online now, and my presentation is less about the teaching delivery tool and more about creating an assignment that you can use to draw on all these resources. I think a lot of times when we think about, okay, we don't have the students in the classroom anymore, how can we deal with this? There's some things that we would have done before, like going to the library and visiting special collections that we just kind of abandoned those assignments. But I would actually argue this is the time to really take advantage of those materials because they are things that we wouldn't have been able to send students out to sift through before, and now we really have the time and the reason, since we're not in the same physical space together, to do that. So on the one hand, I'm talking about a project that was an analog project. We did go to the top floor of the library and we did sift through, actual slides, like not these PowerPoint slides, but actual physical slides. But it could totally be done with the materials that are online. So I'll just give a few examples of those things. And I want to really emphasize the process of the assignments. So not only are students going and finding artifacts, but then they're also annotating. In the assignment that I did, I had students actually annotate the slide, which was a pretty intensive primary research project. And then the other opportunities are to create an online exhibit of their own materials that they might find themselves, or to curate an online exhibit through a blog or through a web page or anything like that. And it's the process of interpreting that's really important for the students. Okay, so this is where it goes to 5 places in 5 minutes. I just wanted to offer a range of spaces. Sometimes we think a little bit narrowly about materials that could be used for research projects. And I want to really say that it doesn't have to be just, the library materials. It could also be museum materials. And again, as I don't think I need to explain to this audience, but there's so many amazing materials out there. It's kind of a matter of just putting them to use. And so let me just go ahead and go through those. So the first example is the assignment that I had students do, where we went to the archives, and the process of sifting through the actual physical slide boxes and trying to, hold up the slides to the light and see what was in them, from a travel collection from a psychology professor who traveled in China in the late 1970s and very early 1980s. Was really meaningful for the students, just to see, okay, how do we get these images? How do we make meaning of them? How do we figure out what's in them? And we had to cross-reference the itinerary for the travel voyage and the cities that they had visited with some of our own sleuthing. Like, okay, how do we figure out what these Chinese characters mean if the students don't speak Chinese? And so it was just a really fun and meaningful way to decode things. We really took a lot of class time to work on it, which I think was important, and something that I think shouldn't be overlooked since people are so busy now. It's like everything goes offline, but people are still pretty pressed for time. But just to allow plenty of time for this is important. And then the reflection at the end of the assignment was also really meaningful. So students not only wrote up an annotation that could be presented as part of a class repository, but they also reflect on what they learned and how this learning differed from other types of learning, which I thought was really meaningful. Okay, the next example, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this, but the Olympic Peninsula Community Museum is quite an impressive project that took very seriously looking at all different constituents and stakeholders from the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. And as you know, probably there are a lot of immigrants from China and Japan to the Olympic Peninsula to Washington State in the 1800s, and also subsequent to that. And so what this project did, which is its own really interesting story, is they just gathered together as many artifacts as they could find from the community. And so now, as you can see, it's 12,000 images and artifacts. So just a lot of materials that are ripe for sifting through. And people might not think right away when you're looking for East Asia related materials to look at a community museum like that, but I would say it's actually a great example. And then, we know there are a lot of other community museums that might be focused on more Asian community. In Seattle, the Winglet Museum, I used to take students to when I was at the University of Washington, and just lots and lots of really great materials there. Again, students can pick images, annotate them, and then write a research context on what these images mean to them and how they put that together. Next example is the memory project from Duke University. Again, many of you are probably familiar with this from Loju is making a lot of effort to create this incredible collection. Now there are 487 items and so many interviews with filmmakers, and it's something that's awaiting a lot of people to use it and make use of it in their classrooms. There are transcripts and translations of interviews, and just a great opportunity for students to choose one or two or more of these interviews and then go and research the village they came from. Who is the filmmaker that interviewed them? What is this project all about? So lots of opportunities there. Okay, moving on to the national museums. Library of Congress has, the Asian Reading Room, but also a lot of digitized collections and growing all the time. And so I just pulled this as one example, one image that could be used. This is examples of censorship on items that have been collected together. And so once again, students could research what's the context, what's the background of these images, why were they censored, what's the deal, why do they now reside in the US Library of Congress, and other questions like that. This example is from the Smithsonian Museum, and it's from the Ferrer-Sackler Museum. I put this at the bottom that the online catalog is now merged with the entire Smithsonian catalog. So on the one hand, it makes it more complicated to search, but on the other hand, it once again will give you images and materials that aren't necessarily in the East Asian specific spaces, but would nonetheless be really meaningful. So there you have it, really quick spin through different resources and things that students could do. I don't have the time right now to go into the actual examples of what students created, but there's a lot of things could be done with Omeka. Also, just the scholarly repositories at the university libraries can be a great resource for this and give students an actual platform, as well as using the university websites or web pages or blogs. I would say it's great to put this beyond just a classroom, like a Moodle or Blackboard space, and put it out into the public so that it can be shareable on social media and useful in a student's portfolio moving beyond the class. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. And again, thanks to the organizers.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Dr. Blumenfield?
Hi.
Hi, Susan. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Susan Taylor. Thank you so much for this really inspiring presentation. I wonder, this is probably a huge question, but do you have any thoughts about best practices for developing, say, an assignment, like a first assignment about curation for undergraduate students?
Yeah, I would say it's really important to show some examples and help them understand the technical tools for that, because sometimes that could be intimidating, but it shouldn't need to be. This is something where if you're in a physical classroom space, it's nice you can kind of bring things together and then, lay materials out. So maybe even encourage students to try it with something that they are familiar with, like, their collection in their childhood bedroom, or what do they have in their bookshelf? Like, how would you curate that assignment or that set of materials to get them thinking like a curator or like a materials collector? And then Also thinking about the framing, so it needs to have an introduction, like the entire collection needs to have an introduction, as well as specifics for the artifacts. They each need at least a caption or a bit of text or an image. And sometimes PowerPoint can be a familiar, or even Google Slides can be a familiar way to start that process. So you could think of it like, you have an intro slide, 3 slides of content, and then something else. And then the other thing that can be really nice is if you pair students together to provide feedback or even work together. I think working together might be a little harder in the virtual environment, but if you can build into the assignment a long enough time that the student creates the exhibit, kind of round 1, and then they actually have to do like a gallery walk equivalent where they're looking at each other's assignments, and you could have an assignment that they then make substantive comments on 3 of their classmates' projects. I've also experimented with kind of ranking like best to, most needs improvement kind of assignment, and students don't like that too much. But if you have the right dynamic, or you feel like the students are mature enough for that, it could be helpful too. Like, let's give a first prize, make some gamification for that. And then, have them actually give feedback on the peers. And then the important thing is not only do they need to get the feedback, but the revision must require them to incorporate the feedback. So I've started using revision memos. Otherwise, students don't really pay attention to the feedback or necessarily incorporate it. And then from that, it usually becomes more of a classroom project and a more cohesive thing. And then just moving on, you can, if it's really well done, you can then do a press release with the university marketing people, get some attention for this, make a blog post, make a social media post from the university communications team to kind of amplify the great things that the students are doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you. If we don't have another question, I think I'd like to move on to our next speaker, our final speaker for the evening, because I just realized the time. Okay, I will move on. So our final speaker today is Kaitlyn Ugoretz, I believe, PhD candidate in contemporary Japanese religions at University of California at Santa Barbara. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I've been muted this whole time. Great. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm going to set a little timer for myself to try to stay on schedule. But today I'd like to present to you all a digital tool that I found useful in the classroom prior to COVID and also during. It's a tool called Story. One of the major things that I try to bring into the classroom as a teaching assistant and as an instructor is to help my students take ownership of the material in the course. And so I've been using story-based assignments to encourage my students to create collaborative multimedia study guides or just general project-based learning. So Story is a collaborative multimedia instruction and presentation tool for the classroom. I'm going to demo it in just a minute, but it's a really open platform. You can think of ways to use it in a multitude of ways, including class study guides. This is one of the major ways that I use it in the classroom. A timeline assignment, creating a museum of digital artifacts. It's a really great tool for group projects. So hopefully there won't be any issues with the video here. But if you go on Story and you create a project, there are many types of templates that you can see here. This is a pre-recorded video. There are many types in terms of English and social studies. A lot of the templates are geared towards, I would say, middle school, but it's very useful in the university classroom. So if you start with a blank template, you can see here I'm creating a test. We'll wait till it gets to the good part. basically the main interface is a blank timeline. And so you can click anywhere on the timeline and add a variety of elements. So text, links, images, a different variety of quizzes. So multiple choice, matching quizzes, multimedia, videos, audio, different files. You can even add a forum module. You can add images through a variety of ways. As you can see, the free photo stock website Unsplash is connected to this platform, as well as Google Drive and YouTube. There are a lot of great stock images in there. If you were to create a story for your classroom as a way of presenting information, but I find it most useful as an assignment for students to create themselves. So I'm slowly in this pre-recorded thing making my way over to an assignment that my students created last year. I find this useful to use with small groups of people. This is from an intro to pre-modern China course that I taught last year. All of the content that you see on this timeline was created by my students. Typically, I would assign my students to create a certain number of entries for an assignment. Because there's so much different kinds of content in an introductory course, there's lots of topics that we go over. It doesn't neatly fit into a timeline structure, but it is topical in this case. And I assigned my students to create 2 entries from a list of vocabulary terms for the upcoming exam. And as a way to allow for extra credit, I hope there won't be loud audio here from this video. Okay, there's no audio at all, but there would be. I allow my students to have extra credit by making extra modules. So if there are any terms that haven't been taken by the group, they're free to do that, or to add something extra. So one of the little quizzes and such. And so I do have a couple of rules that I give my students as to what kind of content to put into the boxes, of course, adding the title. And then you can have a second round of revisions with the students to peer review their own entries. And so this way, the students are creating their own kind of crowdsourced study guide for the exam. On this exam that was created by a professor that I was teaching under, there was a large volume of terms. It was very overwhelming to the students. And so using this crowd-based collaborative format, according to my students, was very useful in terms of limiting the amount of stress they had in creating their own study guides. And through the peer review process, they were able to go through and challenge their classmates on certain knowledge points within the content, or to go back over things that were unclear to them. And it's kind of a trial run of the exam. So, so far, this has gone very well in the classroom. Checking my time, I'm out of time. I highly recommend using Story. It's really fun to play around with. I just got an email today from Story. Story Unlimited is free for the next 3 months for educators in response to the COVID-19, not 10, 19 pandemic. But Story Basic allows you to use text and images, and I think that's sufficient in order to use the platform, although Unlimited is pretty great. So if anybody has questions about the applications of this platform, I'm happy to answer them, although time is limited. Thank you.
I'm very impressed, Kaitlyn. You're the first person who has a question before you were even finished. So I'll go ahead and let David ask his question. I think you might be muted. While we wait, I also wanted to point out in the chat that Dr. Whitelaw has shared some examples of things for us too.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think I actually did that by accident, but I do have a question. And that is, do you know if Story integrates to learning management systems, in particular Canvas?
I'm not aware of any integrations at this point. I think it's all just based on their own website, but that would be pretty awesome if they could do that. Yeah, sorry, my university uses a different platform than Canvas.
It looks great.
Thanks. Oh, someone in the chat says that it does integrate. That's awesome.
I'd like to go ahead and yeah, open up the floor to any questions that people have and have saved as well.
Kathy, Peter Bull, if I could make just a general sort of a comment, which is that seems to me that as somebody who would want to be using these things and deploying them and teaching, one thing that would be always helpful would be to say, okay, given whatever university you're at, we all have a platform, right? At Harvard, we have Canvas, other places, there's Moodle, Blackboard, and so on. And all these platforms already have certain capabilities, right? So what is the problem you want to solve that your current platform can't solve that leads you to say, okay, I want to use this? Because every time we use another tool, right, we're creating more complexity both for ourselves and for the students. And within a limited time classroom, we actually don't have much time to mess up, right? We've got to keep things moving along. So if I sort of listen to the presentations, then I'd say, well, there are things that Canvas or Zoom on Canvas, for example, doesn't do well at all. And so Hisa, for example, Professor Kuriyama presented an example of that, of how we could give a, but it's really much from the teacher's perspective, how I can give a presentation that suits me as I want the students to engage with me. And Congregate does something which I'm pretty sure Canvas does not let us do, which is to listen in on various groups of students, right? To let them form groups, and then for me as an instructor to go sit with different tables. I think that's possible, right, with this, and try to engage them in these small groups. So, but I think it'd be really helpful in thinking about how we present new utilities to say, if pedagogy is the issue, what is it that my platform can't do that I want to do and that this allows me to do? And what are the costs for me as teacher? And what are the costs for students as students to make this work really efficiently? That's just a general reflection on how we think about this. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I agree completely. Do we have any other any ideas to share? Any questions and thoughts?
I find out as a host myself, I don't have the raise hand function, so that's why I take the my privilege to ask a question. I want to ask a question to Professor Kuriyama. You mentioned that there is a recording function, and I saw a little bit of it. Two of your images appearing on the screen during your presentation. Can you show us more about that function? Because I think it's a very interesting function. Professor, I think you are muted.
Yes, I don't think I have an ability to unmute anyone.
Sorry. For some reason, my computer is really acting up. I have like multiple screens. So I don't, what do you see anything now?
Yes, I can see. I think it's the
Okay.
app.
So it's one of the nice features that you can do is if you're making recordings of, it's not that different except for the capacity to sort of show yourself and move them across different screens. But you can record a video of yourself, giving a presentation. You can have a background PowerPoint and so on. The only thing I was mentioning is that because you can do this, and it actually is pretty convincing, you can record yourself beforehand and then speak in conversation with the recording. And you really can't tell the difference between the recorded version and yourself. So it opens up other possibilities for presentation. The other thing I would just say is that for me, I think of it's not so much a teaching tool in the sense of most of these other things. It's really a presentational tool. So I think it's really useful for giving a lecture, giving a presentation, but also for scholars in giving presentations. If you're going to give a presentation online using PowerPoint or Keynotes, then I think, and you have a Mac, then I think this is definitely a better way to do it. So just stop sharing.
And yes, we have a question from Gavin.
Yeah, it's again to Hisa. Could you talk a little bit about where you get your background images? Do these come with, or do you just pick them up off the web and then use them? Because it strikes me one of the presentational aspect is you're actually taking people into a very different space, and then able to use that and incorporate that into the way in which things you're talking about, sort of themes or whatever. So it's really interesting, but I'd be curious about the images themselves that you're using.
So these images that I'm using are basically pictures that I either found or had. It's very easy to incorporate any images in the background. You just add it as a room. You can also incorporate whole videos as your background. You have basically total flexibility in both the setting of the room, the way you appear, the way you want slides to appear in the room. So.
Yes, Sarah.
I have a sort of question that's to the end of what Professor Bo was raising. So, I mean, in thinking about teaching tools, I guess it makes sense to start with what is the problem you're trying to solve, then deploy the tool, and then try to figure out if it worked or not. And here at Harvard, the reviews for last semester are just out. So I'm thinking a lot about reflecting on feedback. That's usually how I think about evaluating whether something worked or not. So particularly for Professor Zahlten and Juhi, I'm wondering, looking back on the tools you presented, how did students find them, or what was sort of the feedback? Do you know if it solved the problem you were trying to solve?
May I
Juhi,
go first?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So the critical problem, so we just, as a team of TFs, we discover Congregate in the middle of the semester, last semester. And one of the critical sort of problems that we have constantly encountered by using Zoom was that it has a lot of problems when it comes down to having smaller group discussions. So one of the TF had to manually make breakout, the list of people to be in a breakout room, and then sort of like summon them again when they need to join the entire group and such. So there always had to be one technical person in the classroom setting. So Congregate was an alternative to test whether such problem could be solved. So except for the very last sort of, oh, let's have a semester end party thing, we did try a bit by just simply sharing the Congregate link in the middle of the class instead of making the breakout room session. So we had the usual sort of lecture or like the entire class session on Zoom. And then for the smaller group discussion, we had used the Congregate. And it seemed to have worked out pretty smoothly for that small purpose. And I think it might be useful to answer your earlier question, which I sort of answer wishy-washy in a way. There's no max cap for Congregate, unlike some of the more technically advanced apps. You don't even have to pay for the basic feature of Classroom. And for instance, Sarah will be teaching a very large course consisting of, say, like 120 students. It might be a little bit of pain to create before the classroom session, these smaller, say 10 plus tables manually. But once you have set it up, you can also add co-host as your other TFs. Once students enter the entire Congregate room and start participating in these smaller tables, then all these TFs can sort of like wander around and as Professor Bull had mentioned, participate again with other students, or also monitor where each students are located on the setting. So that, and additionally, you can also choose to turn on and off the chat room function for the smaller group as well as for the entire group. So for instance, there has been some problem with students getting distracted by having a direct messaging per function on Zoom, for instance. We can also prevent that by having the high hand over that turn it on and off. Yes.
It also occurs to me that one of the nice things about the Congregate tables is that the ability to share a common material, right? This is, I think, a problem in Zoom breakout rooms, that you can't really discuss a picture in common, for example.
Yes, yes, indeed. You can also make students be the presenter and use the podium as if they are an instructor for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Sarah, you have exactly the right question, how to integrate the feedback. The problem with my ability to answer that question is that I've only used GatherTown for very specific things like office hours or more social gatherings, not really as a comprehensive teaching tool yet. Students really like the fact that they can kind of navigate it in a physical sense, almost physical sense. They found that very engaging. And the fact that a large number of people can be in the same space, but can choose who they actually want to interact with at any given time. And, you know, through the use of these tables, which can be configured, you know, if you go into a building and you have a number of tables, and you can set up all kinds of additional tables and things that are themed and are connected through Google Docs. So each table would have a common Google Doc that everyone can enter things into as soon as they're sitting at the table and in that kind of quasi breakout room. Those are things they found really kind of engaging in a different sense. It's the way that, you know, a spatial kind of approach is used for a lot of mnemonic strategies, right, for memorizing things. And I think GatherTown kind of taps into that kind of dynamic. It's incredibly comprehensive, actually. I mean, it can do everything that Zoom can do and much more. And you can kind of remap, you can create your own spaces and set things up. And I haven't used it in that way. So I have only scratched the surface. I don't know if students would be overwhelmed by that if you wanted to try and do everything within it, right? That can also become confusing and so on. In some ways, something like the fact that Zoom has limitations also means that it's really accessible and usable, right? So I think there's always a trade-off there as well, but I can't speak to if in practice students felt that way or not.
I actually have a small question of my own about, it's sort of a logistical question, but is a green screen required to really use, or can a person get away with not using one?
I think the short answer is it's you can definitely get away with not using a green screen in the same way that you can do it with Zoom. I think the non-green screen sort of gimbal limitation function may be slightly better than the Zoom, but you'll definitely get a crisper, image with a green screen.
Thank you. I was just wondering about that because I'm curious to try it out myself. Do we have some other questions?
Or if you have your magic tools you want to share, you can share it with us now. Not only questions, but if anyone here, you have your own teaching tools, you can share with us. I think that's the purpose of the community hours. We learn from each other.
If anyone wants a heads up to our next community hour, we're going to be focusing on, I think, online research as well. So we're kind of going to flip the topic a little bit. And so if you have things you might want to be thinking about that you might want to share next time as well. I do think we are over. If people would like to, we're over time, but if people would like to continue talking or sharing, that's also fine. But I did notice the time, and I would like to thank everyone for sharing with us. I've learned a lot of fun tools, cool tools, and really thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.